Without further ado, let's kick this thing off with our first keynote of the day, an interactive experience with Andy Boyle. Andy Boyle is an author, web developer, and journalist with more than 15 years of experience in media and startups. He's a graduate of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and he studied improv and writing at Second City, IO Chicago, and Boston's Improv Asylum. He currently lives in Chicago with a very fluffy cat and a very big squat rack. Andy, take it away.
Thank you so much. First of all, can people see my presentation? Feel free to nod your head. Yes, great. And the second thing, if you have your camera turned off and you are able to turn it on, I would really appreciate it because this talk is going to be somewhat interactive. And if I can see you waving and doing stuff like that, it just makes it much more enjoyable. So first of all, before we get started, how about we give a round of applause for all of the people who are involved in putting this on, because this is going to be an awesome day. They have all worked pretty hard, and I'm excited to be a speaker to you all. So this is my bona fides. That's a photo of me, in case you don't know what I look like as I'm standing here in front of you. I currently work at the Chicago Sun-Times. I work here in Chicago. I've worked at a bunch of places. I've also written a couple books. Here's some nice things that people have said about those books. This is like me pretending to make sure like I am in fact a creative. And it's always good when the Associated Press refers to you as darn funny. There is no arbiter of humor higher than the Associated Press. And then I had a book that came out right at the start of the global pandemic, so you can guess how well that did. Before we get started, I have some simple ground rules, which is basically, like I said, I'm going to need some help later on, where I'll ask some of you wonderful people to volunteer to turn on your cameras and speak. I know it can be a bit scary to speak in front of a large group, especially when we're all just super amazingly talented people. So don't feel pressured if you don't want to. But this is meant to be a fun talk, which means we are going to be supportive of one another and we're going to be nice to one another, because that is basically what this whole talk is about. And since it is early in the morning, we're going to do something I do at the start of all of these kinds of talks, which is called an 8-count shakeout. This will actually require you to move your body. Normally, we would use arms and your legs, but since a lot of you are probably sitting, we're just going to use your arms. And what we're going to do is we're going to count to 8 and like shake your hand. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Switch to the other hand, go to 8, and then we're going to go to 7, and then 7, and then 6 and 6. And we're going to go faster as the time goes. So for all of those who have your camera on, I'm going to be watching, and I'm going to be hoping that I get to see a lot of people doing this. Otherwise, this is going to be awkward for all of us if I'm the only one doing it. So let's get started. 8-count shakeout. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1. Congrats! Give yourselves a round of applause. You're already doing great. You're already being silly, which is exactly what we need for this talk. And now you're fully awake. So the basic premise of this talk is that inside of you, there are 2 brains. You got 2 brains, not to be confused with inside of you, there are 2 wolves. Not that. There's the editor brain, which many of us are probably very strong at. That brain does this. It says these kind of things. Like, that kind of sucks. The first sentence doesn't work. You don't need this extra adjective, and you never do. Don't use an adverb. Use a stronger verb. Please fix this. Oh my God. What if someone reads this and hates me? That's your editor brain. Now, how many of you have had thoughts like this before while working on something? Raise your hands. Great. You should. The other part of your brain is the jester brain. This is like the creative center of your brain. This is the part of your brain that does these things. That's the part of your brain that is excited and is just throwing out ideas and is like, what if we did this? And then what if we did that? Oh, we can do whatever we want. The possibilities are endless. I can see to infinity. And it would probably be funny if we used a monkey. This is always true. Nothing is funnier than involving a monkey. But you need both. And that's the problem. You need to know how to turn one off and turn the other one on. And that is what I'm going to show you throughout this talk. We kind of default to the editor brain This is why we almost always want to say no to anything. So again, raise your hand. How many of you have had some really cool project that you wanted to do, and maybe it was just kind of weird or a little different, and when you showed your boss or somebody else, they just said no, just right off the bat? Just no, of course not. Well, some of you are very lucky. Or maybe you had your friend ask you to do something weird that you've never done before, like go to a restaurant that serves food you've never had, something like that. Your brain likes to jump to no. It's this lizard part of our brains that basically looks at things we have done and understand, and then compares it to new thing. And then an alarm goes off because it sees danger. This is why most new things are boring and suck, because our brains default to that. This is the editor brain at full power. Somebody had a good quote. It's like 90% of things want to suck, and you have to fight against it. And that is because the editor brain often takes over. So I'm going to tell a joke. A writer and an editor are dying of thirst in the middle of a desert when they come across an oasis. The writer is ecstatic and dives in, drinking until they're about ready to explode. Then the writer looks toward the shore and sees the editor peeing into the oasis. The writer yells, "What the hell are you doing?" And the editor says, "Making it better." Which goes to show editors can sometimes be a little difficult. But how do we fix this? This is where you enter improv as a creativity tool. Many of you are probably aware of the TV show Whose Line Is It Anyway? Where they kind of take suggestions and then they act out and do some stuff like that. That is a form of improv. Improv as an art form was developed in the 1950s, first as an acting tool. So again, it was geared toward helping with creativity. It was later expanded and turned into the actual performance itself. And for many, it's used as a tool to help people come up with sketches, write scenes, do other sort of creative endeavors. It's not just for comedy, by the way. There are a lot of drama-related purposes and a lot of other creative purposes that you can use for this. So these are tools that we can use to help us become more creative. This is Mick Napier, who runs improv theater in Chicago. And he said, improvisation is the art of being completely okay with not knowing what the F you're doing. Well, we're all making stuff up every day of our life. Every conversation you have is generally improvised. Whenever you drive your car somewhere, you're having to improvise on the spot, deciding where to stop, move forward, use your turn signal, give that person a thumbs up who just cut you off. It's pretty normal. We make stuff up the entire time of our life. I may even improvise a large portion of this presentation. And you'll think, no, he's reading from cue cards. He's just that good. Your whole life is an improv, is what I'm trying to say. And you've all done a pretty great job so far. But there's one simple principle that I'll be teaching you today that'll help you unlock your jester brain and boost your creativity. And that's two simple words. Yes, and. These are the two most powerful words in the creative world, other than checks cleared. That's because the editor brain wants to go, no, that's not a good idea. What if we did this instead? Or your editor brain might go, okay, maybe, but what if we changed it? Or the editor brain just says, that sucks. You suck. This sucks. The jester brain, however, just goes, yes, and also this. It's about building off of each other, not saying no to anyone else's ideas or your own ideas. It's about the idea of agreeing and building, which is one of the most important parts of collaborative creation, which is what almost all of us do on a daily basis. So let's do a quick game as an example, and I'm going to need 5 volunteers. So if 5 of you are willing to unmute yourself and have your camera on, and in case you're scared, the next slide has some good advice. We're all going to have fun. It's mandatory. So it's going to be great. So let's get about 5 people to unmute themselves. And when you're unmuted, say hello so I can hear humans.
Hello.
There's 1.
Hello.
2. Come on.
Okay, hello.
3. How about 1 more?
Hello.
All right. So this is a very simple game, and these are the sort of things that you can actually do at the start of brainstorming sessions, or you can also do on your own without another person. This is a simple game. It's called Remember Mexico. It doesn't necessarily need to be Mexico, but the idea is someone starts it by saying, hey, remember that time we took a trip to Mexico? Then the next person would say, yes. And remember how we ended up at that deserted beach? Then the next person would say, yes. And remember how we found that treasure chest in the sand? The next person would go, yes. And remember it was full of 1995 Nebraska Cornhusker Championship hats? And then when this is done, you kind of go through a couple times. And the whole idea is you are building off and collaborating with the person before you. No matter what they said, it is correct. And you are agreeing by saying yes and jumping to the next thing. So the group of 4 wonderful volunteers, I'm going to start by saying a sentence like this. And one of you jump in by saying yes and building on top of it. Do the volunteers understand?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. Oh, you're already saying the first most important word. So, hey, remember that time we took a trip to Germany?
Yes. And we climbed up that mountain.
Yes, and you insisted on bringing that entire keg of beer.
Yes, and then you insisted on drinking it all on once we reached the top of it.
Yes, and then we had to climb back down.
One more round.
Yes. And on the way down, we found that cute little dog.
Yes, but then it started talking to us.
Yes, then it asked for directions back up the mountain.
And yeah, then we had to take it back up the mountain so it didn't get lost.
Hooray! Give yourselves a round of applause. See, it's a fun little simple game like that you can do literally at the start of meetings. And what it has done to your brain, it has started to rewire your accepting of other people's ideas and wanting to be more collaborative and build off of them. I'm going to show you another quick game, and I'm going to want 4 new volunteers. So I'm going to explain what it is and start thinking how wonderful you like yourself and how fun this is, and unmute yourself. It's a very simple game where the idea is to prolong a story by agreeing with whatever the person before you said and then building on top of it. But the idea is you're switching between saying fortunately and unfortunately. I will give you an example. If the story started with, I was walking down the street when I saw a dog. Unfortunately, I'm terrified of dogs. And then the next person would say, fortunately, this dog was more afraid of me and ran away. Unfortunately, it ran to its owner Gladys, who lives in my building. Fortunately, Gladys is blind and can't see shit, so I was able to hide. Unfortunately, Gladys has amazing hearing. The end. So again, it's the idea of taking what the previous person said, building on top of it, but using that fortunately, unfortunately as the word that helps to move the story along. So can I get if you've turned your microphone off or on, can you count off? I just need at least 4. And we know it's so fun.
Hello.
There's 1.
Hello.
2.
All right, I'm in.
All right. 3's good, and I will also help. So I'm going to start, and then again, we're going to go in order, and we're going to go through it just 2 rounds. So let's see. I'm going to start it with, I walked into my favorite restaurant when I saw a former teacher of mine sitting there.
Unfortunately, she was also sitting with a former student.
Fortunately, that student.
Yep.
Fortunately, that student was an old fling of mine.
Unfortunately, the store was about to close.
Fortunately, they had patio seating.
Unfortunately, right as I left, I saw 2 police cars pull up.
Fortunately, those 2 police officers in the car were great friends of mine.
Unfortunately, a dog started barking.
The end. See? The whole idea, build off, build off, build off. It's a very simple game. And the idea is literally to have fun. Nothing that you say is wrong. That's, I think, what's really great about these is, again, especially if you're doing any kind of group brainstorming exercise, it helps to set the stage. None of us are wrong. No ideas are bad. How many times have you heard a boss or somebody say, no ideas are bad? And then they immediately go, that's a terrible idea. You don't want to do that. So great job. Claps to all of you. So again, how to use these games. So those are 2 examples that you can use at the beginning of a brainstorming session. And again, this sounds weird, but if you start to do these on a regular basis, it starts to rewire your brain into accepting anything and then building off of it. So instead of shooting ideas down or being too scared to say anything out loud, this gives you the freedom to say whatever you want, to throw out ideas, and to have people build on top of them. How many times have you perhaps heard an idea from somebody else and it gave you an idea that you ended up using? That is what a lot of this is supposed to help you out and make a much more safer space for folks. And I'll give a couple more examples at the end of the talk. So now I want some folks to open up the chat window, and I want you to write down a specific location. And so just feel free to type in a very specific location. Perfect. Orlando, Florida. Memorial Stadium. We're going to go with Memorial Stadium. And now give me an adjective. Stinky. Perfect. And I am going to use these 2 words, and I'm going to kind of come up with a business that doesn't exist. The business is going to be Bob's Desmellifier, and what they do is after football games, they go and get rid of the stink at Memorial Stadium. They can't do the stink on the field, but they can do the stink in the seats. Ha ha ha. I'm a graduate. I'm allowed to make that joke. So what I want you to do for the next 3 minutes is you are going to just write up slogans for Bob's Desmellifier, the company. Come up with slogans. And you're not working on one slogan. You are going to pump as many as you can out in 3 minutes. You are not going to edit. You're not going to stop and try to write the best one. You're going to try to do as many as you possibly can. And Michael, you are correct. It has been there for 2 decades. So this is the mindset that you should have. What DJ Khaled said, another one. Keep writing down ideas. Keep coming up with more. So you can use pen and paper if you want to open up Microsoft Word, type on your phone, whatever you want. Just don't put it in the chat window. And you're going to get 3 minutes, and I will let you know when you got 30 seconds left, and you are going to start now. And remember, as many as you possibly can. Every idea is good. This is your 1 minute warning. Keep on pumping them out. 30 seconds. And pencils down. Now give yourselves a round of applause for doing this, because I saw many of you appeared to be writing or looking down. So what I would like you to do now is to go through your list and pick the best one. And remember, the weirder or zanier is better. Who here thinks they wrote the most? If you think you wrote the most, unmute yourself and tell me how many you ended up coming up with. Or you can type it.
I got 22.
That's awesome. In 3 minutes, 22. That's great. Now that I've given you a little bit of time to go through it, what I would like for some of you folks to do is, if you would like to say it out loud, feel free to unmute yourself and say it. But otherwise, I would like for you folks to start typing your favorite slogans into the chat window, and I will read them off. Or if you don't feel like having it be said out loud, you can like direct message me in here. Old traditions, fresh smells. That's pretty good. A smell as sweet as the 90s. Keeping seats fresh like your mom did. How do we de-smelly? We won't telly. Taking the stink out since 1995. See, these are wonderful. For when the game was a little too exciting. Oh, folks, we don't stink at removing the stink. We'll shrink the stink. The football game may stink, but this stadium won't. Thanks to us, now the Huskers only stink at football. Oh, folks, these are amazing. I am incredibly proud of. It's almost as if you're all professionals at this. No stench left behind. So here's the thing. How many of you wrote like 7, 8, 9, 10? If you had only written a single one, you probably wouldn't have been able to build upon perhaps some of your other attempts to come up with, some of these amazing slogans. Now imagine if you are in a group setting and you're all trying to work on a project, and if you just did something like this, you gave yourself 3-5 minutes, it needs to have an end time. And the idea is who can write the most? And then you try to write as many slogans as possible. And then you have people kind of go through and pick their best couple. And then you can kind of pitch those. So to kind of show a personal anecdote, whenever I'm brainstorming ideas, I try to do as many as possible like this to an annoying level. For my second book, we had a working title and they hated it. My editor was like, we're clearly not going to call it this. Thanks for trying. So they asked me to send them a list of 10 possible new titles. And again, because I'm very extra, I wrote 50. Guess what the 50th one was? The one they used. The last one where I was like, this is the dumbest one. I'm going to put it on here. Word for word, big problems, a former fat guy's look at why we're getting fatter and what you can do to fix it. That was the last one. And they were like, that one's good. And I was like, holy shit, really? Because at that point, I couldn't tell what was good anymore. My whole idea was, listen, I'm just going to throw out as many as possible, and then somebody else can help me make a decision. I still think the best title was, I was fat, and so can you. They didn't find that humorous at all. So again, these are the kind of tools that you can use in your own work whenever you're doing anything. Don't try to push for just one. Try to do the kind of more machine gun effect. Write as many as you possibly can, because you're going to have a lot more. And then you can polish later. That is when the editor brain comes in later. So I love this quote. There's power in looking silly and not caring that you do, because that's kind of what we're doing right now. Like writing 22 slogans is kind of silly, because some of them are going to be really bad. But some of them are going to end up being, like we see here, amazing. These are astounding. But this quote is the key part to the jester brain. It's the silliness that sets you free. We're all trying to act cool, like nothing ever bothers us, which is total bullshit. We're emotional beings. So if you allow yourself to be as silly as possible while doing these exercises and not caring about what others think, you're going to end up with much, much better ideas. And that is one of I think the hardest part of being a creative is trying to let yourself be free to be silly. And so by doing some of these exercises, especially in a group setting, you're kind of setting everybody at the same level. There's no like a rock star or boss. It's just we are all being silly and fun to get to the same kind of brain space to come up with collaborative ideas. So I want you to start typing in some things that bug you or are mildly annoying into the chat window. These are good. Oh wow, these are amazing. I'm gonna go with asterisks that don't explain themselves. We're gonna do that one. Asterisks that don't explain themselves, because to me that's a personal pet peeve. I love that. So what we're gonna do now, you're gonna come up with a business to solve that problem of asterisks. What a hard word to say. That don't explain themselves. So what we're going to do, we're going to break out into small groups, and they're going to do all the fun stuff to make that happen. And you're going to count off by numbers in the group. So it'll be like 1 through, I think, 7 or however many people are in each group. And what you're going to do is you're going to go down the line and answer some relatively simple things. Like, what is our business name? Do we have a mascot? If you have a mascot, who knows? Where are we located? Like, you can just go down the line and have the first time you go through the line, come up with whatever the business name is, and then kind of start to come up with what is it? How do you actually solve this problem? And the important thing, nobody's wrong. Whatever anyone says, you all have to agree and build on it, no matter what you think about the idea. The whole idea is you are yes-anding off whatever anyone else said. If someone says your company is called the Rock and Roll Frogs and you sell vacuums at discount prices to suck up the asterisks, that's what you are. And then you will quickly do the same thing, going down the line with numbers, devising a quick commercial for your business's product solution. And again, this is meant to just be like, how about we have 3 people talking? And then the next person will go, yeah. And the first person is like, boy, I sure hate asterisks. What a hard word to say. We're going to say asties. We're going to call them asties. That's a much easier word to pronounce. So feel free to call it asties or not. If you can pronounce asterisks, my God. You would think I'd know how to talk for a living, because I sometimes do. So you are going to come up with the business name, where you're located, all that sort of stuff. And then you are going to come up with the commercial. And then one of you is going to perform this commercial in front of everybody. It's going to be fun. It's going to be silly. And you're going to get a couple chances to practice it in your small group before we come back. So you're going to get 5 minutes to do this. And again, you got to come up with all the basic stuff of your business. And then you're going to come up with a commercial. And the idea is you agree with whatever anybody says. So any quick questions before we start? Awesome. So whoever is the magical technical person, if we can start popping people into small groups. Okay, great. So you've all basically done something wonderful. You all got together, you decided to collaborate and agree, and I think that's beautiful. And here's the thing I love showing. This is a quote from Del Close, who is kind of one of the instrumental people who helped kind of get improv off the ground. And it said, if we treat each other as if we are geniuses, poets, and artists, we have a better chance of becoming that on stage, or in the boardroom, or in your cubicle. If we treat each other with the kind of respect and as if we are awesome, we're going to be awesome. So we don't create in a vacuum. We create with coworkers. So it's great. So we broke out into smaller groups. Now, who is willing to volunteer and do their commercial? Even if it's just something you read off a sheet of paper, if you got to perform it. Christine, I saw a hand go up. Christine, you and whomever else is in your group, I'd love to hear it.
We don't have a fully panned out commercial, but we did a great job with the name and kind of some taglines, I think.
Love to hear it.
So our consulting firm is called The Fine Print. Ask us about asterisks, where we give you more white space and take the risk out of asterisk.
Oh, that's wonderful. And you know how to pronounce the word, unlike me. Good for you.
Kind of. We say it really fast.
Is there anybody else who would like to share?
I think our team's pretty proud of what we came up with.
Let's hear it.
All right. Our company name is Asterid, and we transform the asterisks into pieces of improvised graffiti-ish artwork with our employees, the asterisk artists. And our ad is eliminate eye whiplash, banish vestigial asterisks to the ether, turn those unctuous punctuation into works of modern art. If you've ever wasted precious moments looking at the bottom of a page, thumbing to the back of a report, or searching aimlessly through an essay, you need to call Asterid. Our asterisk artists will turn your unnecessary addendums into eye-pleasing embellishments.
Good grief. That's amazing. You folks, I thought we only had 5 minutes. That's wonderful. Great work. That is so cool. So what we just heard is how much you were able to get done in literally 5 minutes. When you kind of choose to agree, choose to collaborate, choose to work with one another. Think about what if you did that in everything that you do. Instead of shooting down someone else's idea, how can you build on top of it? Instead of shooting down your own ideas, can you come up with 20 more? That is what hopefully some of these tools will teach you. And I consider them tools. I don't perform or do any of that sort of stuff, or I haven't in about half a decade, but I still use a lot of these in my writing and in any kind of group presentation and that sort of stuff. Here's a couple other games I want to share with you since we are kind of running short on time. First one is called counting, and it's very simple. You stand in a group in a circle and someone starts with the number 1. Anyone else can say the next number, but if 2 people say a number at the same time, you go back to 0. The idea is to make eye contact and you're kind of subliminally agreeing on who's going to speak next. The goal is to get to 30. It sounds easy. It is not. Try it sometime. But again, this is about opening ourselves up to listening to one another, making eye contact, and kind of connecting with those of us. Another one is called 3 rooms. And this is where you just pick a random room somewhere. You come up with a room, and then you each take turns describing what's in it. The north-facing wall is a giant window. I can see a bird on a tree outside. In the middle of the room is an apple tree. They're sour apples, my favorite. Again, the idea is you are building off of that, and you just basically go from one room to another, and then you're done. And then the final one is called, what are you doing? And this is where you get 2 people to face each other. One asks the other, what are you doing? Then the other person will say something such as counting clouds, and then the first person will then physically do whatever was being asked. Then they trade places, and then the next 2 do it. Again, the idea is about making eye contact, connecting with one another, and collaborating. So the goal of all of this, you're meant to be silly. You're meant to get silly. You're meant to have fun. It's meant to be awkward. You're meant to feel foolish. The editor part of your brain can come later, after you've come up with 50 ideas. The editor can come later, after you've written a 250-page rough draft of that novel. The editor wants you to stop from having fun. Editing isn't always fun, but it can be. But creating, to me, is much more fun. Creating is silliness. It's play. It's what we did when we were kids, and we don't often do as much as adults. If you want to have better work, you need to learn to be at peace with silliness. And also, just remember, there's no point to anything and you're going to die. So do whatever. And I mean this in the most positive of way. We're here on Earth. We can have fun. We can do silly things. And then we're gone. So might as well have fun and do silly things. So thank you. That was my presentation. And I just kind of wanted to throw this slide back up with my contact information and say thank you for listening. Thank you for getting yourself involved. If you have any questions, please email me. I don't use social media much because it's a hellscape, but I do answer every email. I'm also on LinkedIn, because you have to be. But I can come and host workshops like this at your company. Again, possibly get your boss to cluck like a chicken. And I also have some books. Feel free to buy them. I prefer if you buy them from local independent retailers. You don't have to buy stuff from Amazon. So I don't want to cut too much more into what's supposed to be your break time. So thank you so much for having me, everybody.